gonna have a TV party, alright!
Tonight, we've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight!
Alright!
We'll pass out on the couch, alright!
Tonight, we've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't want to know. We're dedicated to our favorite show.
And tonight, our favorite show for the last time is Voltron. Season 8, the last season, brought to you by the good people at DreamWorks and Netflix. And joining me tonight, this one last time to finally close the book on this series, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
I just have to point out once again that I got sucked into this whole let's do Voltron thing purely by accident because I'm a nice guy.
Yeah,
I am.
This was originally Robert Cooper's gig, but he is tripping the light fantastic. He's off with some dame, I'm sure, or he's working, one of the two. And
just like for the first season, a few years ago, you were going live when we were on Blog Talk, and we had to have scheduled times. And you said, and you kind of mentioned that, oh crap, I'm going to be flying solo for, an hour or so until Cooper gets off of work. And having seen the show, I said, if you don't want to talk to yourself for an hour, I'm happy to come here and be your verbal punching bag per usual.
And here we are.
I
have to tell you, I'm not going to be shy about this. I cried at the end. I got teary-eyed. When the last episode came up, excuse me, everyone, I'm still not feeling very well. This is one of those nights where I'm very much chest congested, so I'm a little short on breath, so bear with me. But, I watched the last episode, and, when they showed what happened with all of the paladins, and, they had the last supper, if you will, underneath the Allura statue, because she had given her life to save the multiverse, like you do. I definitely got teary-eyed. I mean, look, was Voltron the best series ever? Did it leave the lasting impact on me that The Wire did? And when it was over, I felt a little part of myself had died. Not necessarily, but Voltron. The end of this particular iteration of Voltron tugged on my heartstrings just a bit, and it was bittersweet to say goodbye to a show that I enjoyed. Now, you soulless robot, you black hole of emotions. How did you feel now that Voltron has said its piece and has gone the way of the dodo?
Well, a few things. One, I am not without emotion. My emotional... I tend to view it like a control panel. All right? So if you were to look at Mark's emotional buttons, it would look something like the deck of the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. There's buttons everywhere. You push one, you get a reaction. And I don't mean that negatively, mind you, but you are, by your own definition, a more emotional person given to empathy. I, by contrast... Mine's like a computer keyboard that somebody smashed in rage, and now there's like 4 buttons that actually work.
I was going to say, you're like a woman. You have a button, but it takes some work getting to it, and many people often miss it.
Yeah, I have a few. I have 3 or 4
okay.
Subject material themes that if you push will absolutely get an emotional reaction out of me. I am not a soulless robot. I'm just a human with damaged process. I don't know what the metaphor would be here, but they exist for me. There's just fewer of them. And that said, if you do push one, I tend to react more strongly than someone with like Mark on average has appropriate emotional reactions to emotional stimuli. I tend to be more binary in that, yeah, that's a thing. Or, ugly crying. I don't have a whole lot in the middle.
That's fair.
So, specifically about this, this one didn't get to me the same way it got to you, apparently. Which is, again, fine. I don't think, let me be clear, I think that's more me than the show in this instance. I think by and large the show hits the emotional notes it wants to hit. I just didn't care for the last season overall, so that may very well have bled over into, the whole saying goodbye and seeing what everyone does, 2 years on. If I hadn't been so annoyed with elements of how the rest of the season had been handled, I might have been more receptive to it. And
I feel like they could have taken half of last season and half of this season and thrown it in the trash and made one good season.
They would have made one really excellent season. And I don't know, because the previous season was so good, by and large.
Mm-hmm.
That was all them getting home and then all their stuff on Earth. I mean, there's a few, I think the problem is there's like an episode or two you can cut out of season 7. And there's a couple of episodes from season 8. So do you just do one 20 or so episode super season as your final one, or do you?
Well, this ran the same problem that we've talked about with some of the Netflix Marvel shows, and that is, even at 23 minutes an episode, 13 episodes was maybe 2 or 3 too many. They had enough story for about 8 solid episodes.
I'd go 10.
So, and then like you said, last season, you could probably, out of the 13 episodes, you probably could have cut a couple. So I think, you shave off a couple of the unnecessary episodes. Maybe one Voltron goes to the mall instead of, 2 or 3. Maybe don't do the feud.
I don't know, man. Because I loved that episode for
it's a funny episode,
hilarity.
but really, does Garfield Warfel Snick really, make a difference in the overall theme? I mean, look, the last 2 seasons are the Galra came to Earth, the building and the launching of the Atlas, the discovery of the Alteans that Lothar was farming into quintessence. And then ultimately, Honerva's plan to find the timeline where she could live with Lothar and Zarkon in peace. I feel like that could have been wrapped up in about 20 episodes. That whole, all of those things, and you could have cut away some of the fat.
Yeah, again, I suppose the major question becomes: do you want to do, as a showrunner, as the people behind setting all of this up, do you want to do again 2 separate seasons of about 10 episodes each, or one season that's 20?
Mm-hmm. But you could have you still could have done 2 seasons of 10 episodes.
About 10. I know. And again, I'm sure there's, economics and contracts that have gone into how much they're contracted for, so on and so forth.
Sure.
So there's a lot of stuff to unpack when we talk about this. We're talking about it purely from an artistic perspective. I'm sure there were, either financial realities or contractual realities that we are not privy to.
Right, and I get all that. I think that what you should take away from this part of the discussion is basically, I don't feel like they felt that they had enough narrative for 13 episodes. They had enough narrative for about 10.
I would generally agree with. Well, God, and this is one of the weirder things about this, because while they may have only had enough, general narrative for 10 episodes, part of the arc of a series of television does include, for very specific reasons, downtime, lighter comedic episodes. This isn't a movie where you get a 2-minute comedy bit stitched into your.
Okay, so I know where you're going with this. What do you cut? Knights of the Light needed to be 1 episode.
That absolutely could have been 1 episode. I completely agree with that.
I feel like the conclusion, where they finally went up against Honerva and her super mech and everything, you could have cut out either Uncharted Regions or the Zenith. You could have cut one of those and take the parts that you needed the most and made it into one episode.
Yeah, there's a real chance you could have done that.
Day 47 was completely unnecessary.
Sure, but again, you do want to make sure over the course of a season that you hit certain beats. And I agree you could... I mean, the fact that Day 47 butts up immediately against Clear Day is more the problem than that they each exist individually.
Mm-hmm. But here's the problem. Okay, here was my problem with Day 47. Other than the first episode where the 4 girls go shopping for Allura's fancy party dress date, fancy party dress, I'm not really into anybody on the Atlas other than Shiro. Maybe Pidge's dad, but that's only because I think Pidge's dad has been around for several seasons, and it's the association to Pidge that makes his character worthwhile. Other than that, do you give a shit about anybody on the Atlas? Because I don't.
I mean, there's a lot of people on the Atlas. There's a few. Hang on, since you asked. Because you have Shiro, which you mentioned. You have Pidge's dad. You have my favorite supporting character in the whole show.
Oh, sure. The one that's doing the probabilities.
Yeah, the alternate reality guy. I love that. That guy makes me laugh.
Dude, my kid thought he was the funniest thing ever.
He's hilarious. And I think that he also exists at the perfect overlap between, kids will think he's funny because he's kind of funny looking and he's got the weird accent.
Well, he's yelling things like "jump on one leg," which my son thought was hysterical.
Oh yeah, no, we have to increase our probability of success. Okay, but that whole bit when Pidge says to him, "Okay, you contest the notion that a small thing can have a large ripple effect in impacting probabilities?" No, of course, that's well documented, but you can't possibly have figured out that he pulls out his calculations for, yes, this will actually impact. Oh, you calculated the probabilities? I calculated like 620 of them. And again, he exists at this really great intersection between kids finding him amusing because he's funny, and people, adults who have an inkling of some of the science behind what he's saying, finding it hilarious because it's funny on the intellectual level as well.
Let me re-ask the question: do you care about the 2 characters that are the main stars of that episode?
Oh, the pilots.
Right.
Not especially.
This is my point. An entire episode was dedicated to 2 characters who, other than the bit in the mall with them shopping for the dress, which was kind of fun, and again, you're there with Allura and Pidge, too, so... they're like tertiary characters at best. Why they need their own episode, I have no idea.
No, this episode is pretty clearly it falls into this, okay, we have 13 episodes. Here's all the stuff we have. Here's how we've spread it out. Here's how we're going to hit the beats over the course of the season, episode to episode. We have some gaps here where we need lighter stuff. What's a fun idea?
Oh,
and someone said found footage of the crew of the crew, not the heroes, over the course of an episode, and they went, yes, run with it. And in fairness, I agree with your point about the episodes, about where it falls down in terms of our attachment to characters. That said, the episode itself is solidly constructed and one of the better found footage things you'll ever see.
I'm not debating that. I think the part of the discussion where we are right now is how they were able to stretch 8 or 10 solid story beats across 13 episodes. And I'm just pointing out that there was clear filler that was unnecessary. So we pointed out a couple of them. I don't want to beat this to death and make this the entire length and breadth of an hour-long conversation. So let me just end it there. But I pointed out just in the last season a couple of places where if they had wanted to combine it, or if they had wanted to keep it a little bit more, a little bit more tight with season 7. That's the way they could have done it. But let's move on. We talked about, speaking of season 7, we talked about who was going to be the big bad of season 8, and both of us pretty pretty assuredly said, "Oh, it's going to be Hagar. It'll be Minerva," and it is. But I think I had argued, and correct me if I'm wrong, that she was going to bring the weight and breath and wrath of the Galra Empire on Earth, and that's not what happened. She basically has a very selfish, very character-driven plan. And it's so funny because we just did this. I don't know if you listened to the source material we did on the search for Ray Palmer. Probably not. But recently, Jesse and I covered a story within the Countdown series, the search for Ray Palmer, which was a series of Elseworld tales where the same 4 or 5 characters, Kyle Rayner, Wonder Girl, Red Hood, and Bob the Monitor, don't ask, travel...
Is Bob the Monitor a monitor lizard?
No, Bob the Monitor is a monitor.
Oh, wait, an actual computer monitor?
Nope, try again. Bob the Monitor is like a watcher.
All right. Because those other 2 options actually were kind of interesting, but no, he's just one of the... All right, fine.
You know what? The story might have made sense if he were an actual just lizard. But no, he's a watcher. He's the DC version of the Watcher.
Yeah. Again, like I know what the monitors are in the DC universe, and it's similar to the don't they have the Anti-Monitor as well?
Yes.
All right.
Long story short, too late. The Search for Ray Palmer is a collection of Elseworld tales where these 4 or 5 different characters travel from the Red Sun universe, which is where Superman lands in the Ukraine and becomes like the leader of the Soviet Union, the Gotham by Gaslight world, the Wildstorm universe, a universe where everyone is gender swapped, etc., etc. And they're looking for Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer has gotten lost in time and space. He's somewhere in the multiverse, and apparently he's very important to the monitors. I don't want to get into why he's important, but
Why is he important to the monitors?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
The point that I'm trying to get to is that Ray decided he could no longer live in a universe after the Identity Crisis issue where I think it's Sue Dibney who kills somebody else's wife, or somebody kills Sue Dibney.
Somebody kills Sue, yeah.
Yeah, somebody kills Sue Dibney. The Justice League are all spying on each other. It's a whole mess. And so the very fabric of the Justice League and being a hero is torn asunder. Not to mention the fact that specifically his wife is dead, from what I recall. So he makes the choice to kind of look at the broad spectrum of the multiverse and say, this one right here, where all the heroes defeated the supercrime, and there's no more superheroes left because there are no more supervillains. Oh, and by the way, my wife is alive. I'm gonna live there. Well, apparently Minerva had also read The Search for Ray Palmer because she has the same idea. She has decided that she is going to find the universe where she can live happily ever after with her beau, Zarkon, and her child, Lotor. The problem is, and there's always a problem with this sort of thing, that if she decides that she's going to live in another universe, in another timeline, she will then somehow or other destroy the rest of the multiverse.
Sort of.
Well, that was I both read it and that was the impression I got from watching it. So where am I wrong?
She winds up destroying the realities that she passes through, but if she stays in one, that one is stable.
That's what I said.
No, you mentioned that she would destroy all of them.
No, it's not the one she's living in.
She won't even destroy all the others.
Okay, just the one she's passing through.
Just the one she has passed through. Then, once she gets to that reality and is rejected because she's crazy and doesn't fit there.
I hadn't even gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, no, that's when she decides, no, you know what? Screw it all.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm basically right that she's got the same same idea as Ray Palmer, only it doesn't work out because Lotor figures out that's not my real mama, and so she says, "Fuck it all. I'll just end reality as I'll just end all of existence," and so the point of me getting into all that plot detail was, what did you think of the evil villain's plan this season? Because I personally enjoyed it. I thought it was a very personal tale. I thought in terms of what this character would do and how they would run things. I thought it made more sense for her to go down that road than to be the all-powerful, crazy general that's going to set Earth on fire, which they had already done, basically, with Sendak. I kind of got a kick out of her, going back to like Lotar's Alteans and saying, "Follow me, I know the way," that sort of thing. I thought this was, in terms of a way to end the series that isn't a repeat of stuff they've already done. I thought they mostly accomplished that. Again, I just felt it took a little too long to get there, but nonetheless, what did you think?
I'm torn on this because I like the idea, but I take issue with the execution.
Okay.
The idea, and, well, there's a few things about this that kind of annoy me. One, my biggest gripe with the last season of this show, in addition to it kind of being a little overlong, it gets really preachy. And I don't like being preached at, whether I agree with the fundamental premises or not. Anytime a show, a movie, whatever, gets preachy, I tend to tune out. Like, that's one of the things I don't enjoy.
So when the mailman shows up and yell message, you're out?
Pretty much. Now, and let me be very clear, that doesn't mean a piece of art can't in some respects espouse or explore a point of view, but you can do that without preaching. And it's a bit of a fine line to walk at times, I'm aware, and what is preachy to me may not necessarily be preachy to other people, also fair point. We all have different tolerances.
Talk to me about, okay, when you say preachy, are you saying like there was some sort of modern philosophy? I mean, in other words, like... Do you want to get blackout drunk watching this show? Take a shot every time one of them says diversity is our strength. Okay, that's what I thought you were talking about, and not specifically because I honestly didn't pick up on it, and it may have just because I was trying to bang out as many of these episodes as I could on a Saturday. So who knows? So I may have picked up on some things and not others. But you're talking that there's sort of a modern philosophy that found its way into this sci-fi fairy tale that they were hammering you over the head with. Yeah,
and look, and again, let me be clear. It didn't bother me in any of the previous seasons. Mm-hmm. The fact that the Galra Empire is rather homogenous, and that it is the Galra, and they're putting together a coalition of other groups, other races, other species. I don't care. That makes sense in this context. That doesn't bother me. When you go out of your way,
it's also not particularly original. The Empire was homogenous. It did not deal in aliens. It only dealt with humanoids. I would tell you that if you picked 5 random fantasy sci-fi elements, the bad guys are always homogenous and the good guys are always diverse.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like if we go all the way back to Lord of the Rings, right? Mm-hmm. If we want to go all the way back, the armies of Mordor are predominantly orcs and goblins and evil men. Whereas the armies of the other guys are men, elves, dwarves, ghosts, halflings, technically.
Trees.
The tree ends. Yeah, and again, let me be very clear about this. If this is handled properly, I really couldn't care less. And I mean that as a viewer. Like, okay, is it an established trope? Sure. Would I rather you maybe do something more interesting with it? Yeah, sure, but also, again, I don't care in the sense that it's just a methodology of storytelling. When you try to beat me over the head with your point of view, that's when I start to care.
Well, I mean,
and that's what this did.
Did you really feel like that there was an agenda afoot here? Like for example, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I literally just rewatched the Half in the Bag review of the Ghostbusters Answer the Call. and the Mr. Plinkett review of same said, where there was clearly an agenda with that movie. It didn't start out that way, but ultimately that movie became like a rallying call for feminism and equality in opportunities for females to males in movies in leading roles.
Not a good rallying cry.
Not the point of the conversation. But did you feel like, same thing here, where somebody decided that now, Voltron now would be a good time for this to be a rallying cry for fucking, I don't know, diversity?
Intersectionality?
Yeah.
Yes. And
not just it's just part of the narrative. Good guys.
Yeah.
Good guys are diverse. Again, bad guys aren't.
Yeah. Like, no. Prior to this season, literally until this season, the good guys were diverse, drawing from everyone they could get their hands on. The bad guys weren't, and no one cared.
You didn't think the narrative was making a big deal about it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And again, when I say, and look, I suppose you could argue that, no, I don't. Okay, here's the primary difference. And maybe this has to do with subtlety. Maybe prior to this season they were subtle enough that I just didn't care or didn't notice. I'll acknowledge that's a possibility. But when you have one of your main characters, in fact, your lead protagonist by most definitions of the phrase, repeat multiple times that our strength is in our diversity, yeah, I think that's a conscious choice.
To what end, though? I mean, who the fuck is watching Voltron and needing to be... I mean,
okay, hold on. I don't think this was designed to be some, sweeping piece of propaganda.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a niche audience, to say the least.
Oh, yeah. No, I get that. This is not sweeping propaganda. This isn't reefer madness.
I was going to say, this isn't going to reach the kind of people that Ghostbusters was intended to reach.
But I don't like being preached to, generally speaking. And this last season, they went that direction. Now, again, maybe it was just so they could pat themselves on the back about it, rather than we're going to convert people. But they still did it, and it still put me off. And there was a whole thing, too. I had a gripe about, and this will tie back into your question about how I felt they handled the entire thing with Hanerva/Hagar. It makes sense for the character to do what she does along the various steps. And I did kind of like that rather than just another rehash of the Galra have fragmented. And her power lies in the fact that she now has access to technology and magics that only she does by manipulating the surviving Alteans. And... yeah, because again, I think another season of we're fighting the Galra would have just fallen very, very flat in that respect. But this season also kind of went out of its way to show, boy, there really aren't any bad guys, are there?
Yeah, it's funny. You don't watch The Orville because you're racist against Seth MacFarlane.
Seth MacFarlane is not a race, and if he were, it would be the worst.
But they go out of their way to, because they're drawing parallels to Star Trek. They're Starfleet, and then their version of the Klingons are the Krill. But they do make a point to say that there are other inherently evil or misguided other alien races out there. Certainly, Star Trek did that, especially the Next Generation type shows, like Deep Space Nine, probably being the best example. Is you not only had sort of the Klingons out there who were not exactly the Klingons of old, but ended up fighting the Federation at one point or another, and then of course you had the Kardashians. And you had several, the Dominion. I think the last time I brought this up on a different podcast, I could not remember any of this. But, you definitely had, then even to a lesser extent, you had the Ferengi. So you had your big bads out there, you had your Dominion, and you had your lesser bads, then you're on your fencers. But at least there was an array of nefarious, for lack of a better phrase, bad guys you could contend with and mix things up and do different things with.
Opposing forces. Whether even if you want to play with morally gray territory, you need a force in opposition.
Right. There was none of that in Voltron once they did away with the Galra. It was it was the Galra were the worst of the worst, and everybody else was a peace-loving farmer planet. Yeah.
And hey, that only came back to bite them pretty hard in the butt on this season.
Well, I think because this was if Voltron has any faults, and this is about the series at large, all eight seasons, is that this is a very intimate tale between the Paladins of Voltron and and the Galra. That's kind of it. And then within that, you have Zarkon, Hanerva, Alora's dad, Alora, and then if you were to draw another ring, it's the Paladins of Voltron and the Galra generals. That's kind of the extent of the story. It's basically, once they got into it becomes very clear once they started getting into the flashbacks of how the Lions came to be. Is that you had these you had this group of people who they were together, then they split, and in that split and rift caused a massive war. This war starts to engulf the rest of the universe, and so it's kind of a tale of correcting that mistake. All of the things that caused the rift to happen. It's about going back and righting those wrongs in a way. So I think there was no other way to go. If they wanted to do a season 9, they would have had to continue with Voltron being the defender of the universe, and establishing the fact at the very end of the season there were other threats out there. But this is a very intimate tale, believe it or not.
Oh, I completely agree, and that's another part of the reason I think some of the ending falls flat for me. Because it does... There's a bit of it that does work. Right? Again, Hanerva's motivation, even the actions that she chooses to take relative to her motivation, okay. Then we get this big, flashy fight between the super mechs at the nexus of all possible realities.
Did you feel a little jumping of the shark?
Well, hang on. Here's the thing about this, and let me be very clear. I don't mind wild escalation of shows like this. In fact, I'll throw out a name for one of them. There's an anime called Gurren Lagann that very deliberate. It's almost entirely action oriented. Again, there are characters. I think it's well written. If you want to, there's plenty of people who know more about it than I do that have talked about it. But it starts with these guys underground finding a very small mech that then gains the ability to fuse with other mechs, and there's conflict on the planet, there's conflict in space, your standard fare for this. But the final battle features robots so large they are literally standing on the surface of an entire galaxy punching each other in the face. And I'm okay with that because they escalated along that line the entire series. It starts with the little one, and the little one merges with another one. Then those two wind up fighting a bunch of others and then merging with another battleship. And hey, there's more of these that are larger. And it just, by its very structure, continues to escalate. To the point where these two giant robots, again, beating the crap out of each other, in intergalactic space, literally in one instance standing on top of a giant spiral galaxy, I'm okay with it, because you've deliberately escalated to the point of absurdity. By contrast, we have this, which is a very intimate story about this small group of people and how they interact with in the world around them. And then they introduce alternate realities, which, fine, string theory is not actually proven or provable, and arguably has been disproven at this point, depending on the literature you want to touch on. But, okay, fine, narrative device. And then we just go from this relatively intimate story. Even the fights, quite frankly, even some of the larger scale fights have felt very, close quarters, have felt very, intimate. And now, apropos of, we want to go out with a bang, we get these two, again, large mechs battling at the nexus of all possible realities as Hanavu slowly destroys them one after the other. Just a pretty jarring tonal shift there for me.
I honestly, and I think you said it right then and there, and I think you did a good job of saying it that way. I think they knew this was going to be it, and I think there was a couple of different masters they were trying to serve. There is a contingent of people who watch the show because they watch all things anime. Robert Cooper started off on this show as not just a Voltron fan, but a fan of the larger genre of anime. I'm not a huge anime fan, but I know it exists. I know people love it, and I know there are some tropes associated with anime that are very popular. And I feel like, so when I say like it had different masters to serve, we're talking about like masters in terms of fandom. And I feel like they sat around the writers' room and said, we really want to, we want to make sure that the anime fans are satisfied, that they get, the big spectacular ending. It bored the shit out of me most of the time, to be honest with you. Early on in the season, I enjoyed Voltron versus the Roe Beast. By season 8, especially, you can count on a couple of things with Voltron. Someone's going to have to scream, "We gotta form Voltron" at some point. That doesn't bother me. But there's always that shot of somebody flipping a switch and extending their arm out to do so in a very dramatic fashion. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of that. And I feel like, to what you're saying, I feel like they went over the top with it in this season. But I think they felt like they had to. Like, this is the final bow, so let's take our cocks out. Let's just throw them out there.
Part of it also is they have done in the previous season was just, okay, we're trying to save the Earth, which was a welcome reprieve from the previous 2 seasons where, if memory serves, Lotor's constant jumping in and out of the quintessence field was threatening to destabilize the entire universe.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's save the literal universe. And there was one, I can't remember if it was the one immediately before that or the season prior to that one, that also was, hey, universe-ending event. Like, okay, we've already saved the universe twice. What's bigger than the universe? All the universes. Like,
yeah.
No.
I mean, on the one hand, I think that's an argument, though, for why they did that.
That is why they did that. I'm just saying I don't think it works as well.
Yeah.
Or again, if you're going to escalate to the point of near absurdity, you have to do it continuously. It's a lot harder to. It's a lot less believable and a lot less smooth a transition when the rest of this season is again a lot of purely character-driven, intimate, and emotional stuff.
So let's talk about Marvel for a second. One of the big complaints about like Marvel movies or the Star Wars or whatever, or even Lord of the Rings for that matter, is your enemies are always nameless and faceless. It's always robots or orcs, stormtroopers, the Chitauri. They're just there to take a beating. They're nameless, faceless. Thanos's rabid dogs. It's all kind of the same thing, and I think that I think that they did a good job of balancing sort of like the epic the epic scope of what they were trying to go for, while still keeping. This was still Minerva's story. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words,
much more so than any of the Paladins. This was very much her story.
Right, and that's the thing, is I feel like they were going, like, their final bow was to address Minerva as a character and you know, and make this really about her, and opposite her, make this about Allura. Because in the previous seasons, this hadn't been as much about Allura as it was about the Paladins. You know, you had seasons where...
she figures it very prominently in some respects, but they devote, I think, most of the first half of the season to her and her struggling with, you know, should I take Dark Quintessence into me? And
right. And in previous seasons, it was dealing with
Go ahead.
I was like, previous seasons dealt with Paige and the search for her brother and her father. You had Keith, who had to discover his entire past, that he was half Galra, his association with the Blade of Mamora and all of that, and how that affected his relationship with him and Allura. You had all the stuff about Shiro, and then finding out that Shiro was actually not Shiro, and all of that. So much of Voltron deals with just Voltron. And I feel like this season, it was very much... in one corner you had Minerva, and in another corner you had Allura, and the season was very much about those two. And so the reason why I brought up like the Marvel, Marvel and all this other stuff is that you can have an army of faceless dogs out there, but you still have to have that one centerpiece that you can relate to. And so why does Infinity War work? Well, because you have Thanos there. Why doesn't Justice League work? Because nobody relates to fucking Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf was just, evil man does evil things.
The character or the band, quite frankly.
But you see what I mean? Like, Minerva...
Oh, no, I completely agree with you.
Minerva, you sympathize with Minerva. You see where she's coming from. She, when she suddenly realizes, I was a man once... and I want to get back to that. I want to get back to where I was happy. And so, she concocts this cockamamie plan to be in a place where she can be with her son and her husband again. It's like, yeah, okay, everything, because you're going back to, they escalated to the point of absurdity, but it all comes back to Minerva. These things just aren't happening in a vacuum. You know what I mean? Yep. It isn't just nameless, faceless parademons attacking, an orange Earth for some odd reason. For whatever the reasons are. It's, there was, at the center of this is a deeply human story. A mom wanting to be back with her husband and child that she lost. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Again, my issues was with some of the execution, not with the basic beat or even the motivation.
Mm-hmm. The little that I'll agree with you on that is, like I said, I just thought that some of the battle scenes went on forever. And some
sadly,
of the use of some of the hang on, the use of some of the anime tropes drove me up the fucking wall. Go ahead.
The anime tropes don't bother me. I enjoy anime myself from time to time. I think what bothered me was, the mech battles. There's just a lot of sameness to them.
Yeah.
I mean, even the and part of that is again, one of the things that I thought they did a really good job of avoiding for so much in this particular show for so long was, the power creep effect. Where, okay, we're now, we defeated this Robeast that was strong enough to destroy a planet, and now we are clearly strong enough to destroy a planet. So what's next? Well, this one threatens a sun, and now we can, so the point being, they did a largely good job of avoiding that. Unfortunately, that led to two complications here. One, they just went with more power creep in this. Okay, all realities. All right, fine. You've now escalated apropos of virtually nothing. Mm-hmm. in terms of your tone, mind you. Again, the motivations make complete sense. And then you also have done this thing where you have perpetually put Voltron in danger, which is a good thing. Your hero shouldn't be able to win easily. That defeats the purpose in a lot of respects of having the hero to begin with if it's a foregone conclusion. unless you're really, really good at playing around with the notion that it's a foregone conclusion. For an anime example of that, One Punch Man, because nobody beats Saitama, so how do they play around with it? And again, they do very well in that show. Here, the problem becomes, because we've seen Voltron in trouble so much, the notion that Voltron is just losing the fight against Minerva's mech is not in and of itself enough to keep me terribly engaged. So if you're going to have Voltron in distress frequently, which is fine, then when the final battle comes along, the fact that Voltron is once again in distress is not in and of itself enough of an emotional hook. You need to do something else with it, be it visually or whatever, and they just don't really hear. And then, I mean, they end it with, let's all get together and sing Kumbaya. Bear in mind, I mean the fight, not the actual show.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. You know, at the very end of all things, Allura says the only way that we're going to fix this is for me to sacrifice myself along with Minerva to fix the multiverse. And she says it's here for goodbye to Lance, which I want to circle back to her and Lance because it just deserves to be talked about. And then that's it. It's over. And I know for myself, I thought it was kind of a brave choice just because American media, you typically don't destroy the love interest. You don't kill off the princess. And I'm not entirely sure. It's not that I disagree with the narrative choice. I thought that I think I was 50-50 on it. You know, on the one hand, I wasn't quite sure what in the narrative this was paying off. You know, where it was like, we talked about in season 7 when we were thinking about season 8, like who was going to end up with Allura and how that all was going to shake out and everything. And I never once thought she's going to sacrifice herself to save the universe. I thought maybe the Paladins might, like maybe Voltron has to sacrifice itself, and these brave Paladins, et cetera, maybe she would be one of them. But it was sort of I just thought it was a weird narrative choice, not completely unsatisfying. Like I said, it made me tear up, especially because I knew how it was affecting another character, which would be Lance. But let's just talk about
who is,
that.
in point of fact, your favorite character, if memory serves.
He's up there. I like Hunk too.
I think for me, the problem that I ran into with this is, one, it comes a little bit out of left field.
Yeah.
Which, and bear in mind, that is on occasion a problem. It can also be an asset to, again, the fact that it does come out of left field is not an inherent weakness if it's done appropriately. And on that note, I think I'm kind of with you on 50-50. I think my other problem with this is it kind of feels like a half and half solution, like a half measure. Like we get to the end, and I was kind of with you, like, no, Voltron itself is going to go down swinging, and they're all going to die. And it feels like in the writers' room, somebody proposed that, and like, it's too dark. we can't kill all of them. This is kind of a kid's show. Fine, everybody lives happily ever after. We can't do that either. It's we've established that there is death in this world. We've established the real stakes. It's a little bit too contrived if everyone lives happily ever after. Fine, so what? Only one of them makes it back? No, only one of them dies. All right, which one? I don't know. Roll a dice. That's kind of what it felt like to me. Well, no, sorry. Only one of them dies. Okay, which one? Well, we've established that Allura has the Altean magic that will be necessary to heal this, so her. And that was kind of more my gripe. Like, it felt like, okay, we can't have everyone live happily ever after, and we can't kill all of them in a heroic sacrifice that saves the universe. So which one is it going to be?
But when you frame it that way, Allura is the only choice. Nobody else possesses magic.
I'm aware. Like, again, in the context of how that unless they wanted, my feeling on how this goes then in the writer's room depends on what comes first. Do they plot out we're going to fight at the nexus of all realities first, or do they first decide, okay, only one character's going to die, who's it going to be? And then they construct the ending around which character they pulled out of a hat to be the one that dies.
But yeah, even said that way, let's just break this down. What effect does the entire show, based on everything we know up to this point, what effect would it have if Lance had been the one that gave up his life? Same question. What if it was Keith? Same question. What if it was Hunk? What if it was Pinch? And I feel like maybe Keith is about the only one where there's a narrative payoff to him sacrificing himself.
Frankly, I could see Lance, especially the way the last season played out. If he's the one that dies and Allura has to go on without...
I don't think it's as strong as a narrative beat. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's not because... Oh, no, never mind. It's not because she's only been interested in Lance for the last, 14 episodes, whereas Lance has been harboring a pretty serious crush on her since they met.
Right, but and a lot of that is typical male. She's pretty and she's the only girl in the room. I don't feel like Lance had any real emotions for Allura until the very end of the series. I feel like a lot of it was she was a pair of tits in the room.
No, I would challenge that simply because I agree that it probably started that way, but I think by the time all of their interactions with Lotor, for example, I think were kind of the catalyst for him as a character. Examining this, is this purely a lack of options, or do I actually feel something for this girl?
So maybe about then it changes, but before that, I don't think I'm wrong at all.
No, for a while it was just pretty girl.
Yeah,
and then it did develop beyond that because let's face it, that's how we're men. That's how it always starts. Pretty girl. Is there something more to this than that?
Right. Do I want to strangle you after knowing you for a while?
You've now talked for 8 minutes about your about your fascination with horses and horseback riding. Yeah, this is not going to go well.
And if it wasn't for my horse, I would have never finished that semester in college.
Yep.
So anyway, let's bridge over, unless there's more to her sacrifice you want to talk about.
Again, a little bit out of left field, but I can live with that. I don't hate stuff that comes out of left field on occasion.
Let's talk for a minute. We're nearing the end of the hour here, so I want to start to wrap up here. But we do finally get at least an episode or two of Lance and Allura being together after all this time. What did you think of that? Was that satisfying to you? Did you not care? What were your thoughts?
I wasn't invested in the romance at all. I called it correctly, but I wasn't invested in it.
Yeah, I think when you want to talk about left field, I don't feel like it was earned in any way. I think we needed more of Lance trying to be with Allura and something happening getting in their way. Instead of,
I think again, you and I have a very different perspective on this one. In large part because I think you spent a lot of the previous seasons, assuming it was going to be Keith and Allura, and whereas I viewed it through I viewed their previous stuff through the appropriate lens.
Mm-hmm. Maybe
it did feel a little more earned to me in that respect.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need to rewatch it again. But to me, it felt like we're running out of shit to do. Okay, well, for the first couple of episodes, let's do a thing with Lance and Allura. Which, by the way, it's not that I did not find them to be an adorable couple. And the episode where he's holding her and, it's right before she takes the dark quintessence, I looked at that and I was like, aw, aren't they adorable? But outside of that, I was like, I get why... the other part of it is she's a bit distracted. She was once the only Altean, aside from Koran, left in the universe, and suddenly there's all these Alteans popping up, but they're all, trying to kill her. And, it's like, that's a bit distracting.
Yep.
And I can only imagine, you putting yourself in that position, and then somebody else going, hey, you want to fuck? It's like, well, no, time out. I've got shit to do right now. I'm a bit busy. But they sort of just forced it in there, so I was like, yeah, it's all right. I think my favorite... I'll tell you who my favorite character is this season, and probably my favorite character overall, especially because I think he has some of the... I think, other than Keith, I think he has the best arc of all the Paladins, and that's Hunk. I loved Hunk this season. I love the fact that he what he brings to the table is, this idea of of breaking bread as a way of getting towards peace. I love the fact that he uses food to communicate with people. Food is his love language. I love the fact that to get the Alteans to talk, he bakes them cookies. There was some of the best. I thought Hunk delivered some of the best lines, and it's like instead of making him just sort of the team dummy, he really proved to be one of the most valuable guys, in Voltron, and maybe Pidge being the other one, and that's just because of her scientific prowess. But I feel I think when it was all said and done, I was going to miss Hunk the most.
That's probably fair. I mean, I'm torn on this one because, again, it plays into there are no bad guys, and boy, if we could all just sit around and talk about things, we'd all realize that the world's a great place and we should just be friends. And that's shockingly naive and horribly stupid in many respects. I mean, it's a great ideal to strive for, I suppose, but at the same time, I like that there is someone actually putting forth that philosophy, because if the alternative is, well, we should just kill each other. That's pretty bad too. So I was okay. Again, I was okay with it. Let me put it this way: I liked the ones he did for the Alteans more than I did the one at the end, when he gets these two bickering planets to oh no, look, if I can cook your food appropriately together, then behold this beautiful metaphor I have crafted at 350 degrees for 2.5 hours.
I liked it. I
sure, go on. Sure. Fair enough.
The Israelis and the Palestinians are just missing the opportunity to sit down at the table and have a good meal together. Then we'd have peace.
I'm sure.
Clearly, then we'd have peace.
Boy, if we could just get the Ayatollah, man.
If Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump had just sat down at a table and enjoyed a good meal together, there would have been no government shutdown.
Yeah. See, you want to know the crazy thing? We somehow started with the most plausible and went more and more unrealistic as that bit went on.
All right, final thoughts, things left unsaid, anything else you want to talk about?
Again, there's a lot good about this season. I like the focus on Minerva. I like that they maintained a lot of the, kind of intimacy of this show. The ending felt like a stumble rather than, a great success in a lot of respects. I feel like it got a little bit preachy. And again, that's an off-put maybe that's just me. I get off-put by things that I feel preach at me. And in fairness, that includes things that preach stuff I agree with. I just don't care for it. I don't think it's necessary.
Do you think DreamWorks will come back with Vehicle Force?
Probably not.
You think this is it? This is the end of Voltron, or whatever possible offshoots they might be? We're done here?
For a little bit.
This isn't going to be the Power Rangers with his 67 iterations of it?
No, God, I hope not.
Did I tell you the time I got into an argument with my daughter because she couldn't answer the question, what kind of Zords do they have? She was telling me about the Power Rangers show that she was watching, and I said, "Oh, what do their Zords turn into? Or what do their Zords look like? Are they vehicles? Are they dinosaurs? Are they animals? What are their Zords?" And she couldn't answer me, and I was growing increasingly infuriated with her.
How dare you not know what kind of Zords they have?
You're the one watching the show. I thought it was a simple enough question. Anyway, speaking of simple questions, I asked you one. Go on.
Let's see. Again, the action such as it is largely acceptable. Again, the final battle feels flat because it's supposed to be the final battle, and it turns out to be essentially what we've seen before. There's one kind of goofy episode that I liked. I mean, I kind of enjoyed Clear Day for what it was. I mean, Keith and Hunk getting stuck on the equivalent of Small World together. Yeah, I got a serious kick out of that because of all the characters that could get stuck together. Listening to It's a Small World after all for. Oh god! And it shuts down, and you get the stupid voice like the ride is temporarily stopped. Please remain in the vehicle. As all the annoying little pop-ups keep singing, "It's Clear Day." You can just see Keith slowly lose his mind and then finally breaks out and just like blows up half the building to do it. It was anyone who's ever been stuck on Small World, you know that man. That was some next level gratification right there. Did I have anything on the end? On the actual ending, what happens to each of the paladins? Because I don't think I did.
Well, let's talk about that for just a second. I didn't get the thing with Chip. I'm not entirely sure if that paid off something or what that was all about.
I think it's a reference to the. This is weird because I think it's a reference to the original Voltron show that this is technically a prequel to.
Okay.
But I didn't watch Voltron back then, so I couldn't tell you specifically. But it might just be them working on AI, and it's the culmination of her studies. Excuse me.
Yeah, I was okay with Pidge. I don't know. I felt a little like, really? That's all they went on to do, huh? Keith doesn't take over the Galra, but he turns the Blade of Memora into UNICEF. All right, that makes sense. Lance working on the family farm, but taking time out to deliver Alora's message across the New Altea.
It seems about right.
I can't argue with it. I don't know. I don't know why for me that seemed a little unsatisfying, but not entirely inappropriate. Shiro. Now this didn't bother me, but I do enjoy the fact that everyone's got something associated with their character, and it kind of makes sense for where everyone is. And the thing they picked for Shiro was gay marriage.
And you wonder why I thought this got preachy.
Look, nothing with his military career, and he went on to establish whatever. Nope, I retired and married the man of my dreams. Terrific.
Okay. Again, and I do have to, because lest I get accused of some form of bigotry. Let me be clear: when they announced that Shiro was gay, I didn't care.
Right.
I mean, you can listen to our review of the season that reveals that he had a boyfriend on Earth. I mean, okay, he's gay. My literal reaction was, so what?
Right.
Like, nothing else about him changes. He's attracted to men. I really could not possibly care less.
I mean, it might affect how Brazzers does their Voltron porn. There's got to be some Shiro on guy action somewhere, I guess.
Oh, no. The entire parody of this is all just guys.
It's all just gay porn.
Yeah, there's so much Keith and Lance. and Keith and Shiro. That's basically it. Those are the pairings that the fandom came up with. Look, again, the point being, I don't actually care that the character's gay. I mean, again, and again, it wasn't really, and again, it was not made a big deal out of. It was just part of his character. Like, if he was straight, nothing about him would have changed.
Right.
And in my estimation, I think that's the highest compliment you can pay
It did feel tacked on. It did feel like, okay, well, we're ending here. It's not like...
Hang on.
It's not like we can lose fans. Go ahead.
Hang on. I just meant his being gay. Like, that was just... Again, that was just it didn't actually matter to anything.
Right.
It was just part of his character, and fair play, he's gay. He's still Shiro. That was my take on it. I didn't care that much.
Right.
And then you deliberately decide, because again, all of these are choices, that the last shot you have of this entire show is him and his husband, who we've never met before.
We have no attachment to.
Kissing as you close in with a heart zoom.
Did it seem like a big fuck you to the audience?
Well, half of it. I mean, again, let me be clear. If you wanted to introduce a love interest for him over the last couple of seasons, okay. Have him talk about it. Like, I want to get back to Bob. Yeah, like,
you know,
I mean, I don't care as long as you're not, again, beating me over the head with it.
He needed to have the conversation, like with Keith, that Captain America and Tony have on Hawkeye's farm in Age of Ultron, where they're debating. You know, they're talking about you go to war to end the war. You know, and that needed to be the appropriate time for Shiro to say, "I have a husband to get. I have someone to get back
anymore.
I have someone to get back to." You know,
I mean, he did at the time, which, like, and again, this is a failing of the story.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, instead of like just inventing a husband out of thin air for that final shot, just so they can kind of, you know, for anyone that would have objected to it, and I don't, but you know, when I say it's a fuck you to the audience, it's a fuck you to the people who are going to have a problem with it. But
so me.
A problem with it because he's gay, not the problem with it because of his bad storytelling.
Okay.
But there needed, in other words, for it not to just feel tacked on and done purposely to annoy people, you know, to be in your face about it, there needed to have been a reference earlier on. There needed to be a scene between this, like, Shiro and Keith fighting about what, you know, why are we continuing to do Voltron? Why are we continuing to fight this fight? And he was like, I fight this fight for the people at home, for the man that I love, and I want to get back to him. That's all that needed to be said.
Something along those lines. I mean, I would have accepted, you know, in the course of the last season, a bit where because apparently the guy he married was a crew member on the Atlas. I would have accepted a meeting between them.
In the Navy.
Sure.
In the Navy.
Something.
Sorry.
You know, frankly, them, like, that playing over the loudspeakers as they're, like, stuck in an elevator together or something would have been. I would have appreciated that, you know, just something to introduce this character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're also right about Shiro. There needed to be a bit of, I've been a soldier my whole life. I've been at war with you guys for this last couple of years doing insane things. It's time, you know, I need to go. I need to be done. There needed to be some weariness about him in that respect. And
right.
not necessarily woe is me moping, but
right.
But a little bit of, okay, I'm looking forward to retirement.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if memory serves, the title card that went up about him was, you know, Shiro finally left the battlefield.
Right.
Was able to go home.
And
that's a great line and a great sentiment, but you didn't actually set it up, so it's not a payoff to anything.
Even if they did it in the last season, why not a long take of, you know, the camera's focusing on his feet and it's slowly going up as he's walking along the Atlas, and he goes into his chambers, and there's his boyfriend. Like, how was work today? You know, it's just something, you know, just like this is important. It's probably the most important thing I'll ever do, but God, am I tired of it. And move on to something else.
Yeah, just, again, like, this is necessary. We all know it's necessary, but I can't wait for it not to be my turn anymore.
Right. When does my when does my war end?
I mean, frankly, again, you referenced the scene in Age of Ultron between Cap and Steve Rogers, and I wanted Steve to tell Cap at one point. I wanted Cap to tell Tony, because Tony's whole thing is, isn't this where we fight so we get to end the war and go home? I wanted Cap's response to genuinely be, it never ends.
Yeah.
All you do is the best you can in your time, and that has to be enough at some point, or you will kill yourself. And I think Shiro needed to have that kind of moment that, okay, this is important. You know, again, this is the most important thing I will ever do with my life in some respects. But I really do I am ready to pass this to someone else as soon as I see that someone else is ready to take it from me.
Later on this year, I mean, unless you end up having to cover Impact still, when we talk about the saga of Marvel movies leading into Endgame, we really do need to have to come back to how much of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Tony trying to solve the unsolvable puzzle of war, and how much that guides his decision.
All of it. The driving impetus for Tony at this point, going into and again, we are going to get into that because that is a major point about the entire thing. And some of this is Tony's ego that, I'm the smartest guy in the room. This is clearly a problem that, it only hasn't been solved, not because it's unsolvable, but because I haven't tried to solve it.
Right. And every decision, good, bad, or indifferent, and mostly bad, that he makes is this idea that he can solve war. And how wrong he is.
Congratulations, you cannot paradise engineer, Tony. It just can't happen.
But let's close out here. Final thoughts on the series at large. I really did enjoy it. I'm gonna miss talking about it. Going forward, we've got She-Ra season 2 coming up. Not we, me and Robert, but myself and Alexis Hana. We'll be talking She-Ra season 2, so we've got that. There's Carmen Sandiego coming up. I wanted to ask you, given that...
are you reviewing that?
Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually.
Huh. Who's doing it with you? I mean, I haven't seen any of it. I'm just curious.
Alexis, because I tag her for all the animated stuff I do now.
Cool.
But it did make me want to ask you. I was looking through the list of Netflix animated stuff. Is there anything out there in the world that we haven't been talking about that we should, other than Castlevania?
Funny, because we in theory did a show on Castlevania.
We tried to, at least.
Oh god, what a shit show that was. Our review, not the anime.
I was a little disinterested in that. I promised to be on for the next one, like actually awake. But yeah, no. Is there anything? I mean, after this, you're done with this part of your responsibilities to the network. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, or you're like, nope, I'm good. Call me less.
Nah, you can call me as much as you like. You know that.
Third shot at this. Anything on any of the animated shows on Netflix you're interested in?
Let me pull up the list. Actually, then hang on. TV shows, subgenres. I mean, I think it would be oh God, I could destroy your soul.
Okay. It's always good to start a conversation that way.
That is so tempting. Ooh. Oh man, I don't know if I should do that or not.
Will you just get on with this?
Now, if I'm going to destroy your soul, it has to be by increments, and I can't just throw you into Devilman Crybaby right off the bat.
What is Devilman Crybaby?
It's an animated show. It's an animated, I think, like a 10-episode series on Netflix. It's literally just the one season. That's all there's going to be. It's an adaptation of a manga from the 70s.
Okay.
But it will take out a piece of your soul and crush it. Bear in mind, and I don't know, man. I don't know that even then, I don't know that you would enjoy it necessarily. Not appreciate. Appreciate's the wrong word. But there's some very distinctive artistic choices in the animation style that, at first blush, look cheap and bad, but are actually designed to invoke specific responses. But yeah, that show will crush a part of your soul.
Well, maybe we'll revisit this offline and figure out if there's anything else we want to look at, since we are now down one show. But in the meantime, next week is Punisher, season 2.
That'll be interesting.
So you'll be on that. I believe Jesse Starcher will be on that. I'm not sure if anybody else is joining us. The last time we did Punisher was a panel of 67 people, and the show lasted 12 hours. Ugh. I want that part of my life back. As for the rest of the calendar, the week after that is our One Damn You Hollywood for the month of February. It's going to be Alita Battle Angel. Apparently, the critics hate it, and it's going to bomb. But we're going to review it anyway, because that's what we do. The following week is Damn You
Yes,
Hollywood.
because when has the quality of a movie ever influenced Mark's decision to have us review it?
Speaking of which, and apparently I got the date wrong on this, or they moved the date, but Fighting With My Family actually is supposed to be coming out, I think, on the 14th or the 15th. We're going to review it on the 26th.
So does that just leave open another...
No, I swapped it with Bandersnatch.
What the hell is Bandersnatch?
Black Mirror, the Choose Your Own Adventure.
Oh, okay. What, you guys are going to play through it live?
No, I'm gonna watch it straight through, and then I'm gonna do the Choose Your Own Adventure thing. You asked me when we're doing Carmen Sandiego. We're actually doing it on February 28th. We have Damn You Hollywood, Captain Marvel on the 12th. I'm going away between the 17th and the 22nd, so don't expect a lot of content. I think Jesse Starcher said he's just going to take over being the editor of the week, and we'll see what happens with that. But we're back on the 20th.
There's nothing even that comes out over that period of time.
No, it's an animated movie from Nickelodeon. That's about it. On the 26th of March, we're going to be doing a Netflix movie, which is the Motley Crue biopic, The Dirt. I'm going to have both Robert and Jesse Starcher on for that one, because we're doing a whole week dedicated to Motley Crue. And then finally on April 2nd...
Terrible idea.
Finally on April 2nd, we have the live-action Dumbo.
Also a terrible idea.
So that's what's coming up next for myself and Robert. In the meantime, if you're looking for more content here, myself and Pat did a live commentary for Halftime Heat during the Super Bowl.
The only thing worse than the actual Super Bowl game, watching Tommaso Ciampa wrestle.
Tomorrow night...
I'm kidding.
Tomorrow night, on the Metal Hammer of Doom, we're reviewing Bring Me the Horizon. We'll see how that goes. And then theoretically on Thursday, we're going to put Pan's Labyrinth on trial. I'll be prosecuting. Sean will be defending. I am about to lose my voice. So yeah, tune in next week for a pair of shows about the Punisher. We've got The Slavers on Source Material, and then we've got the Netflix Punisher Season 2. And then Beast in Black being reviewed on the Metal Hammer of Doom. Robert, do your plugs and let's get out of here. See, even now you're dying.
We're all dying, Mark.
Some more faster than the others.
That's the difference. This last Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, I wound up recording an early edition of the 411 Ground and Pound radio show. It was just me. Jeff and I couldn't properly coordinate given I'm not a big fan of American football, but my family has a tradition of gathering for the Super Bowl. We get together, we watch commercials, I tease my aunt because Tom Brady is the best quarterback in the history of the National Football League, and she just doesn't want to accept reality. I don't even like Tom Brady, but that is reality. So I just went. So it is just me. It's a review of Fight Night 144 when Marlon Moraes solidified himself as the number one contender at bantamweight, and will still get passed over in favor of stupidity. I mean, come on, dude's not only on a 4-fight winning streak, he's only lost once in his last 11 or 12 fights. That was a split decision to the guy he just beat.
Are you recording anything? Oh, that's right. You have Whitaker versus Romero, right? Whitaker Romero? No, Gastelum.
Gastelum.
You have that coverage. Never mind. It's the same time as Davis versus Maris on Showtime. So forget it. Move on.
I was hoping to find a way to make that work, but sadly, it doesn't look like it will. Anyway, so there's a review of that whole event, which was a really good event. And in all fairness, if you looked at that event on paper and you are enough of an MMA fan to know a bunch of the principal participants, you would have expected that to be a good event, and it was. There's also a preview of UFC 234, which will come your way Saturday. That is a really thin event. You have a great main event on paper between Robert Whitaker and Kelvin Gastelum. You have Anderson Silva being used as the sacrificial lamb to continue the ascent of Israel Adesanya. And then there's a lot of nothing. Seriously, I think the next best fight on that entire card involves Ronnie Yaya. And I love Ronnie Yaya, but when he's the third best fight on a card, that says something about the rest of the card. I also got to review the results of the latest Nevada State Athletic Commission hearing, and I went off the rails. I didn't go off the rails necessarily. I remained on target, but I ranted a little bit more than I usually do. But quite frankly, when the executive director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission says that they should look into censoring fighters' speech, I go off the rail. I lose my head a little bit. No.
Wow.
That moron, hang on, since you clearly haven't heard this, I will paraphrase for you. The moron Bob Bennett, the executive director, said in essence that Conor McGregor's trash talk in the lead up to the Khabib fight went too far.
Yeah.
That the level of which it does not substantively exceed previous trash talking instances in MMA. I mean, Chael Sonnen called Brazilians primitives who play in the mud and worship tikis.
That's clearly parody, though.
No, it's Chael Sonnen. Like, Chael Sonnen exists in a state of parody, but doesn't know it.
But that's what I mean. Like, there's trash talk, and then there's going to the point of being absurd. And when you hit the point of being absurd, it becomes parody. It becomes, it's just jokes. Like,
Well, Colby Covington called Brazilians a bunch of filthy animals.
Not so much.
In a terrible country. Frank Mir literally said he wanted to murder Brock Lesnar in the octagon.
Understandable.
My point being that what Conor said in the build-up to this fight does not necessarily exceed instances of trash talk in MMA generally. His second point was that trash talk in MMA is worse than any other sport.
Good God.
To which I happily point him to Adrian Broner and Mike Tyson's careers.
Didn't Mike Tyson threaten to rape one of his opponents?
Until he loved him.
Yeah. He was going to fuck him till he loved him.
Yes. Actual thing said by Mike Tyson at a press conference for a fight I believe held in Nevada. And finally, Bob Bennett, in reference to those previous points, said that maybe the governing body should look into curtailing fighters' speech, which is blatantly unconstitutional. So that man is a moron. Quite frankly, I'm amazed people still fight in Las Vegas under the auspices of that bunch of that group of asshats. Point being, I have a whole thing about them because they also handed down the fines and suspensions for Conor and Khabib pertaining to their post-fight incident in Las Vegas last year.
You did this with Jeff listening to you? Did he actually let you finish talking?
Oh, no, Jeff wasn't there.
Oh, okay. Now that makes sense.
Again, Jeff and I couldn't quite coordinate the timing on this one, so it was just me.
Got it. Okay. Well, now I can see why you got away with it with a long rant about this.
And then, last thing, they gave John a one-fight license for the fight with Anthony Smith. So, again, there were things that came out of that I got to talk about. Amanda Nunes hinted at retirement, so talked a little bit about that. Just the basics of the show, but... And then, again, this Saturday I will have coverage of UFC 234 in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. For the moment, I am covering Impact Wrestling on Fridays in the Wrestling Zone of 411 Mania. That's a thing. Look, I've seen a few of the shows now. All their shows feel the same, man. I mean, it's bordering on like early 2000s Raw, where it always started with like the baby face coming out and then Eric Bischoff, and then they get cut off by the heel, and then Bischoff would come out and make a mixed tag team and make a tag team match between partners who didn't get along. We both don't like the heel for the main event, and they just did that week after week after week after week. Again, I've only seen 3 or 4 episodes, and some of this is because they just record all these they record all this material over the course of a weekend and then just edit it together for a bunch of 2-hour episodes over the course of the next 3 months. So there's a degree of that's to be expected. So point being, I am reporting on that, and it's interesting because I basically handle it the same way I do MMA. I don't mean in the it's not a work thing, but I'm pretty straight about it. And that doesn't seem to drive a lot of the professional wrestling fans to really interact with anything. So I might have to start. I won't do star reviews or star ratings for matches. I'm not comfortable enough with my understanding of where pro wrestling is as an art form right now to give out what I believe should be mostly objective critiques. But I'll probably try to throw in a few more of my own personal thoughts about each match, between segments, so that there's at least something to talk about rather than the driest reporting possible. So you can find me there on Fridays if you're so interested. And again, Punisher next week. And I will go through I will take a look through some of the Netflix stuff, and I might try to just see if I can find a series of 3 different shows that are, short, but that over the course of all 3 of them I can drive Mark into suicidal depression.
And again, it doesn't have to be an animated show. I was looking for a 1-to-1 replacement for Voltron, but if there's something, if there's something on Netflix or something on Hulu or Amazon Prime that you are like, hey, this would be fun to start talking about, there's always a place on the schedule.
Let me have a look. I'll go through some of the catalogs for the different things and see if there's something that necessarily strikes not just my fancy. Again, if it were just me, I might just throw you a Devilman Crybaby and say, hey, here's this very psychedelic, very experimental in some respects, 10-episode short season that will just, again, take you on a really nice, emotional, quasi-artistic ride, but at the end is going to crush your soul.
Terrific. Can't wait. All right, folks.
Again, I'll find something else first, but I might have to make you watch that at one of these points, just because you've made me watch okay, no. I know what I might really want to do. The week we review Fighting with Your Family, the week after that, I will get my revenge by making you watch this really bizarre show.
Terrific. Well, hope you will stay tuned for whatever that torture is going to be. In the meantime, this has been TV Party Tonight. For Robert Winfree, I'm your mandated reporter, Mr. Mark Radulich, and frankly, I'm mortified. And we look forward to offending you in the future.